cannot stress this enough. You, as the recruitment agent, have an absolute duty of care, all right, to be the translator between the candidate and the client. The candidate, 9 times out of 10, is speaking Chinese, and the client, 9 times out of 10, is speaking German, right? They are speaking 2 different languages, and let me prove this to you right now. How often does the client say, oh, well, we're going to offer them 150? The candidate says, yeah, they're going to offer me 150. And you say to the candidate, oh, okay, is that 150 package? And they say, no, it's 150 plus super on top. And you go back to the client and you go, so it's 150 plus super. And they go, no, it's 150 package. We talked about it. How often does that happen, right? That is one tiny example of Chinese versus German in terms of they are talking the same. They think they're talking about the same story, but they are talking completely different languages. Now, I'm obviously they're not talking Chinese, and obviously they're not talking German. They're talking in plain English, and that makes it even harder. Your job, you have to really, really understand what I mean when I say you need to be the translator, particularly when it comes to the pointy end of deals. This is where deals fall over all the time. One party thinks they're talking about a certain thing. Another party thinks they're talking about a certain thing, and the reality is they could not be further from each other. They could not be talking a further game. We know that this is what we do. We're the bridge, right? We are the bridge. We're holding one person's hand here, holding another person's hand here, but we're really trying to get them to just shake and say, no, but this is good. If deals are easy, we'd make a lot of money, right? But that's why we exist, because everyone has a different communication style. People aren't very clear with their communication a lot of the time. People have the words people say are probably 1/5 of what's going on in terms of someone's mind. I'm going to give you a great example of this and you'll understand it. So we have a situation in the office right now where we've got a partner deal happening, and I can't give anything away, but this is a person who is on $400,000 right now. But they're capped out. They're not going to make much more. They've got a practice that's doing well. They've got a few staff underneath of them. But in the current structure, they're not going to be able to go any further. So they've gone interviewing with one of our clients, and the client has basically said to us, look, they're on a very good wicket for their structure. We can offer them probably 300, but then give them this incentive that we have, which is bonuses, which is shares, which is equity, all that sort of stuff. And they're going to, like, within 18 months, be way beyond 400. It's going to be more like 500 sort of thing, right? And then keeps growing from there. So the theory here is you're taking a step back to take a massive step forward. And so the client is giving us this, and we think, this is fantastic. And we take that to the candidate, and they're like, well, that sounds fantastic. Can we get that, like, just give me the detail in writing? Cool. So the client comes back and says, yep, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to come in on less of this. In 6 months, we'll put you up to this, and then this is what it will look like here. Now, on paper, we looked at it, and we said, it's saying the right things, but the devil is always in the detail. We couldn't really understand exactly how it was going to work. Now, the client, when he's writing this down, he's like, oh, look, there's a complex spreadsheet behind of it. It works for everyone here. It should work for her. And long story short, because the client has had proof that it works, they've seen how it runs, they understand the metrics or the cogs behind what they've offered, their assumption is that she should just understand the numbers put forward and trust that we're going to get there. However, when you go to the candidate side, she's reading these numbers and looking at them, and she goes, well, on the face of it, they sound great, but there's a lot of grey area here, and I feel like there's a lot of room here to get screwed as well. And you got to remember, this is a candidate who's taking $100,000 less for a leap of faith. So we have in the middle, right, a story where this is a best outcome for both sides. The client gets a national person, brings in a multi-million-dollar practice, and like in a structure that works for them, and they're going to be like, it's just free money for them. The candidate is going from 400 when they can't make much more to I'm going to make a hell of a lot more once I get my feet under the desk. So we just have this no man's land of how do we get there? And the client is saying, here's how we get there, with a vast knowledge in the back of their mind on how that actually works, and they're unable to articulate that. And so our candidate looks at it as risk, 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 risk. Okay? This is a great example of one party speaking Chinese and one party speaking German. And it really is our job to bridge that gap. So my advice in this situation to the consultant running this deal was you need to understand with absolute intimacy what that offer looks like. You need to go and see the CFO and say, what is this spreadsheet behind it? I need to understand the numbers, And then you need to go to the candidate and do the same. Like, why? I need to understand exactly the metrics behind your ability to go down 100 grand. I need you to understand exactly what your expectation is in terms of where you're going to get to in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. I need to understand exactly where you're at, what you're thinking. And then it's your job, consultant, your job to be in the middle and translate what they're talking about, because they are literally reading the same book. They are literally talking the same narrative. They are literally both excited about this idea, but they are so far off this deal happening because of complete translation lost that I don't think this deal is going to happen. There, I said it. And I said it to the consultant. I said, I don't feel good about this unless you can really get in there and understand what the hell they're saying, understand what the hell she's saying, and translate it for everyone. Because right now, they're not translating, they're just receiving, and they both don't feel great about what they're receiving, even though what we're seeing is, guys, we're there. This is happening. You've already, you're in theory agreeing to everything everyone's saying, but you can't feel the exact mechanics of how that works. Does that make sense? So your job as a recruiter, that's just one example, right? Your job as a recruiter, you need to really think like you are the translator between the candidate and the client. So if you don't know something about your candidate, if you don't know something about your client, you need to go and find that out now, because at some point the other party is going to ask you that question. You need to be able to answer it. I'll give you a great example. I headhunted someone last week. They said, yes, I'd love to talk to you about that job. That sounds amazing. And then I meant to speak to them today. Last night, they said to me, look, I love the look of everything except for one thing. They don't have an office in Newcastle. I'm based in Newcastle and I really need to be around people. I've looked at their website. I can't find them online. Look, let's just park it. If anything else pops up, give me a call. I knew that week, my client had literally signed a lease for an office for 4 or 5 people who are already in Newcastle to form somewhat of a hub. And they're very excited about it, but it just wasn't on their website. It hadn't been announced. It's literally as fresh as 3 days earlier. So I was able to very quickly go back to the candidate. Hey, great observation, but what you can't see is I've just had an email from the client. They've just done this. They've opened an office. They've got 5 people there, probably another one in there, probably 6 people by Christmas. I think it's still worth a chat. Oh, absolutely. Had the chat at 2:30 today, got the CV at 3 o'clock, sent it to the client, had an interview by 3:15. So that is me translating the candidate between the candidate and the client, okay? And so these are just examples of why when you're in the middle of these deals and you're getting frustrated, you got to remember, if you're frustrated, one of the parties is frustrated, right? It is your job to translate. All right, so that's it. That's what we got time for today. Like, share, subscribe. It helps us grow. As always, have an amazing day, and may all your deals come true.